Okay, so I just want to say thanks very much to Fergus O'Halloran, who's joining us here at our Conversations on COVID series, part of the ISAG group. It's our new initiative looking at experiences of COVID-19 on the ground and on site in terms of different sectors and different experiences as well. So we're delighted to have Fergus O'Halloran from the 12 Hotel in Barna in County Galway with us today. Just a few notes just on who Fergus is, and he might fill us in a little bit more information on that too. He's the general manager of the 12 Hotel in Barna, but he has a wide range of international experience, having trained in Switzerland, but has spent a lot of his own professional career in Canada as well, I understand. He's also association and chairperson of the Restaurant Association of Ireland. He's also involved in the Western Tourism Forum and the Irish Hotels Federation, and most recently as well, one of the directors of the Galway Food Festival here in the west of Ireland. So Fergus, I want to say thank you very much for joining us and for taking time out today. This is the Wednesday, the last Wednesday hopefully of level 5 of the second lockdown, so I'm sure you are getting busy and prepared for what's ahead. Might start the conversation by saying what was your experience like in March? Maybe if you can cast your mind back to that, to the first announcement and going into the first lockdown.
Okay, thanks Nessa, and thanks for the wonderful introduction. I'll just note I'm not the director of the Galway Food Festival. That was something I was setting up myself a few years ago, and since then I stopped and let a different group of people take over the food festival. My goal in Galway has always been to promote culinary food tourism, and you know, I'm happy to say that over the last 10 to 15 years, we've seen Galway's reputation grow tremendously in terms of its food tourism, its network of suppliers, restaurants, being passionate about local produce. That's where our passion has always lied in the 12. So into this year, 2020, I hope that in a few years' time, we'll be able to say that it was a blip in our history, that crazy year 2020. Do you remember that? Because I very much feel that, yes, it's difficult and challenging for many at the moment. It certainly was for us. But I also think that so many other people have had it far more challenging. Because it's all relative, really, very much so in terms of how one interprets what has gone on this year. For the 12, we started off wonderfully this year. We'd set up a lot of plans, like any business, to have our best year ever. And January and February was certainly on track. And then March came along. So I guess the story as to how things progressed in March, well, people started to get scared around the first week of March. By the 10th, 12th of March, we were seriously looking at, okay, our guests' well-being and our staff's well-being. So we started to meet with the decision of closing the restaurant. Suddenly then by March 18th, we had made that decision, decided to close the restaurants, close pretty well the hotel, everything. It was the hardest thing in our lives, having to say goodbye to, we've got 95 people working here. We didn't know how long this was going to be for. You know, endless sleepless nights crying, and it really was a death in the family. But that was one part of it. The other part really was that overnight we changed to a takeout operation. We're one of the first, I guess, restaurants in Ireland to do so, and it was a massive learning experience for us. We went through the first weekend tremendously busy. Then lockdown actually happened, where everybody had to close. You know, we soldiered on and grew our offering. It became one of the busiest takeouts in the country. We're very fortunate in that we had a lot of space that we could use, and not just offer a curbside pickup, but actually a drive-through experience for our guests. Part of that was as well making sure that it was contactless. That's what we were pushing. So it would be very safe for both the team working here as well as the guests picking up their food. So, you know, people would ring up, pay over the phone, contactless payment, and we would drop the food into the boot of their car. So there was no touch whatsoever. And it really worked for us. After the first 2 weeks, then, you know, we started thinking about, you know, people were looking for drinks. And, you know, we did not want to push alcohol because we thought, okay, look, we're in the middle of a lockdown. This is the pandemic, and we want to be socially responsible. But we thought that still we will be able to offer that service in a socially responsible manner. So we invented our brown bag cocktails, which essentially was a vacuum packed cocktail prepared by Simon, our bar manager, who did the greatest pivot of all time in the sense of he went from being our mixologist, speaking to people, making cocktails all day long, to looking after the hotel at night, being the security in the hotel. But during those times then, he was tasked now with creating cocktails, putting them into a vacuum packed bag, into a brown bag, which was our kind of a cool way of presenting it, and giving them to guests as long as they were ordering food with their drive-through offering. After the first weekend, the social media went bananas in Galway regarding the cocktails, and everybody wanted them nationwide. So we thought, okay, well, sure, why not? We can put them in envelopes and post them out. So we've been doing that since the end of March. And this week we've launched our online store, and the brown bag cocktails are getting a lot of traction in the sense that we've also got a subscription offering now as well. But as of last week, we were requests for cocktails in Glasgow. And yesterday, somebody wants them in New York. And we're thinking, how now can we get them to New York? Because they are vacuum packed, so they're going to go on a plane, and we're not sure if that's going to work. So we're doing the inquiries. We might have to tweak it a little, but that's been phenomenal. So look, yes, everybody knows what restaurants have gone through, what hotels have gone through with closures and so forth. For us, it has been, of course, difficult and challenging. More so frustration than difficulty, really. Frustration in the sense of that we put so much effort into planning our reopening, so much investment financially, so much training. And we opened up out the doors, busier than we ever could have anticipated, which was wonderful. But the challenges therein and that were, well, it took twice the amount of work now to actually serve what we would normally have done. When one took into the cleaning protocols, the ergonomics of how we had set up the restaurant, we had to change totally. All of this to be as safe as possible, both for our staff and for our guests. So not only was it twice the amount of work, but because it was so busy, we needed more boots on the floor, and we couldn't get staff. So it was very, very tough. We went through the months of July and August. Happy days. We did a lot of work here in the hotel in the sense of making the most out of our restaurants. And we also set up our outdoor alfresco dining space called Noon, which is the Irish for noon, as in 12 noon. And that was a huge hit. So we were blessed. One of the positives, one of the real positives that I saw during all of this time was that my team, it was really something special to see how so many of my team rose to the challenge and got so creative and worked so hard. And that's something that, you know, it was lovely to witness. We all know the story, don't you? You know, after a certain amount of time, we went to level 3. Therein again, overnight, you know, we dug deep, came up with some great ideas, and, you know, got the people of Galway behind us coming to stay in the hotel by getting it into their minds that, look, don't think about packing bags or anything, it's a sleepover. So, you know, we called it, you know, come on over, sleepover, put popcorn machines in the rooms, Chromecast, people could just come here, chill out, have cocktails and popcorn, and watch movies in the room, come down and eat in the restaurants. And naturally, of course, we could only look after the people that were staying with us, because in level 3, all of our regular guests from outside of the hotel could only eat outside in our outdoor dining space. So we were at the verge then of, with the demand that we had, restaurants were busy within the hotel with people staying with us, and outside of the hotel, all of our regulars, our locals were dining outside. So we're just on the verge of creating another outdoor space when we went into complete lockdown. So yes, those are the frustrations, and it is frustrating, of course, trying to run a business like that. But this is the reality of the situation, and I really believe that no amount of giving out is going to fix this problem. If I were charged with running the country, I would do things differently. But no matter what I would do, I'm sure I would be criticised for it. The government is charged at the moment with balancing the health and welfare of its nation along with the economy. So, you know, it's not an easy thing to do. I believe the government has done what it can. It could be a lot worse. It's up to us now to stop thinking about the past and focus on the future, because this is not going to go away easily in 21. It's going to be a very slow recovery, particularly so for hospitality. You know, it was the first and hardest hit by virtue of its nature, and it will be the slowest to recover, but it will be a great recovery once it begins, because everybody wants to go out and socialize, and that's what we're here for. So,
absolutely.
that's in a nutshell, in one breath, is my take on it.
Well, I can say that here in this house, it was one of our first takeaway experiences was doing the drive-through, and I had heard about that, you know, drops into the back of your car, and I thought it was kind of an extraordinary pivot at this moment when there was so much confusion and so many different challenges happening. So it was wonderful to see how quickly that you adapted, and how the staff really all were so friendly, to see the smiling faces behind the masks coming up and saying hello. It was just really, it was just that reassuring connection was there. So it was very, very welcomed from this house anyway, and particularly in Galway. But just to kind of go back to, I suppose, the challenges that were there for your sector, and again, you know, obviously everybody knows this is a very difficult and challenging time for anyone who's making decisions or policymakers, and trying to have that balance, as you said, between lives and livelihoods, and hospitals and hospitality, and that we see now that they're the two sides of the one coin. You know, when the virus goes up, people are afraid to go out, and then of course everything gets damaged and suffered. So in terms of where we are now, and looking into the end of level 5 and moving into the Christmas period, and then today then as well, or yesterday, I think the Taoiseach had mentioned, you know, to say that, you know, we may be looking into more restrictions again in January and February. If that scenario happens, which it may well do, that over the next few weeks things will gradually open up, families will visit, people will travel around the country. COVID loves to party, as they say, but unfortunately COVID also loves to travel as well. And so how do you think you'll manage with that scenario, or how are hotels and restaurants planning for that scenario?
Well, okay, next week is our first step, and we still don't know where we stand, but by all accounts we're planning to reopen for our guests checking into the hotel on Wednesday, and we will open our Pins Gastrobar on the ground floor with the idea that we're open for outside dining on the Tuesday. As of Wednesday, if we are in level 3, well, we have guests staying in the hotel, so West will be open. It would be wonderful that if it's announced on Friday that people who are not staying in a hotel can also dine indoors. So we're ready for that. So as such, you know, we're ready for the month of December. Our online shop and our takeaway will also be another revenue stream, which is now set up for the future anyway. It's there forever. It's not going to go away, and we've worked hard on it, invested in it, and it works. Fits in with the operation, plugs in lovely. Okay, winter January. You can't plan. That's the frustration. We just have to keep doing what we've done. You know, we're blessed in the fact that if we were to go into lockdown again in January, our team so far to date have worked with us, and they've come back to work, you know, dropped everything. We'll be ringing everybody. They already pretty well know about next week, but we'll still be confirming with everybody over the next 2 days that, listen, we're back next week. And they come back. Many businesses have struggled with that, and that's very unfortunate. We are in a lucky situation that our team will come back. So if we are shut down again in January, I believe that the loyalty that our team have shown here, they will be back to us again when we reopen. That's the biggest challenge. But outside of that, you're into finances, you're into all of the overheads. Like a hotel is extremely different from a restaurant. We've tremendous bill to pay on insurance, and the insurance companies are giving nothing during our closures. My insurance went up this year by about 15, I'd say about 18% increase in insurance this year when I renewed in June. And I'm not seeing any reduction despite the closures that we have had and the closures that we will have in the future. So that's a tough pill to swallow. Outside of that, of course, there are other overheads, but that would be the biggest. At some point, if it was to keep going on, a business is not financially viable. However, we have a big property here. We just have to do everything we possibly can to keep the lights on, pay the rent. That's why we won't shut our doors. We'll have to keep adapting. The takeout offering, our online shop, or all of these kind of fallbacks that will keep us hopefully thriving. During this lockdown, we have 14 people on the payroll. That's more than some restaurants would have when they're fully open. So, we're managing. We are managing.
And what would you say, Fergus, I suppose you've managed through obviously a lot of experience and creativity and ingenuity and just hard work as well from you and your team to manage to keep the business side running by diversifying your revenue streams in different ways. For people whose businesses in hospitality or in the food industry that don't have that ability to pivot and to get other kinds of revenue stream to keep it ticking along, how do you think a third lockdown in January would affect them or those businesses? Or have you heard from friends or colleagues on the ground?
I have colleagues who already say that if it continues, they're gone, and there's no doubt about that. A lot are holding on for December and then just to get some revenue in. It might balance the books somewhat for this year, but if things continue next year, they know they're going to close. Some of my close colleagues have already closed. I do firmly believe that everyone can do something, and it's a matter of as to what scale it is you do, but you have to try. And I think when you do try, you'll be pleasantly surprised as to how well you can actually do things. That's what we've discovered. So if somebody, I'll put it like this, I'll be blunt. If somebody doesn't try to save their business, well then, that's tough luck. Someone tries really hard and still fails, well, at least they have tried and the rest is out of their control. There will be many examples like that of people, we could be one, who have tried and their business will fail. So when it comes to hospitality, I guess you could look at it somewhat positively in the sense that January would traditionally be the quietest month for hospitality. There's not a lot riding on it in comparison to how December is. One could also take the caveat that, look, December is going to be somewhat reduced, that some of the demand may actually hold back to January. So January could actually be a better month than it normally has been. So there's different ways of looking at it. It is eminent that there is a cure vaccine on its way. So if we were to say this time next year that 70% of Ireland is vaccinated, we don't have the problem any longer. So it's how long can we hold out? And we have good weather so forthcoming, let's say in March or April. So really the next few months in 21 are going to be very difficult and very challenging. And we'll see.
Yeah. Well, to give you a little bit of good news, and I had mentioned this to you earlier, a colleague of ours in ISAG, Paul Dempsey, did some modelling on regional variations and the trends of COVID, and the trends are looking very positive for Galway. The projections are that we could actually reach zero COVID in Galway County and City by mid-December. And one approach, I suppose, like there's different approaches, and of course it's very hard to know on the hoof, you know, how to manage a situation that's changing so quickly on the ground, and so many different regional variances as well between cities and counties and border counties and all of those different kinds of variables that are there. But one suggestion that, you know, that people are looking at is the idea of green zoning areas. And I suppose the initial idea with the levels that we had in Ireland was that we would be operating on a regional and a county by county basis, so that counties could stay open, because the argument is if you've one sector closed, it's very hard for the other sectors to stay open. That if one falls, they all tend to, there's a tipping point where it all begins to affect one into the other. And so one possible scenario in an ideal world would be that Galway would be able to open up fully in middle of December as a zero COVID green zone county, that they could then bubble with other green zone counties that may follow in its path as well. That kind of idea has been in circulation in places and has been discussed in terms of even a country getting to green zone status and then bubbling with other countries. We've heard about it in Australia, New Zealand as well. In terms of the hospitality sector and thinking about also dealing with other sectors like pubs and, you know, hotels, bars, restaurants, gyms, all of that as well. These are all so interconnected. Do you think that that green zone strategy would be something that would be of interest to people in your sector, or that, you know, you could open up a whole county or a whole western region, for example, and then bubble up with another region, and then suddenly half the country is open?
Yeah. Oh, it's wonderful. It is. It's just like we were saying, operationally, how will it work? But no, the idea is absolutely wonderful, and you got to think of it too that you know, if Galway is expanding out into Roscommon and Clare in terms of spreading the green zone, you're going to have places like Cork and Kerry and the rest of the country looking at this, and it's a motivator for them, because they're going to see this happening, and they're going to see the benefits that somebody else is getting. And we know how, as human beings, we're competitive. So we're going to want to do our very best here then in Kerry to be as good as what's going on in Galway. So it's a fantastic, in my mind, it's a fantastic way of counteracting the negativity that goes on. So yeah, it is. How it will work, if we're here in Galway and we're the green zone, and now we've got guests that are coming from Tipperary, and are we making sure, I don't know, you know, and the worry is that they come in, that somebody from Tip comes in and spreads the virus and destroys all the good that's going on in Galway. That's the worry, isn't it?
I think there are ways it can be managed. I suppose as a Cork woman as well, you know, I'd want to keep Tipperary people away from me with the hurling and everything. But I think your general point though is right. I think, you know, in terms of giving something that's tangible and real for people to work towards, but then also that, you know, it's a multi-sectoral approach. So then the GAA teams can open up again, the bars, the restaurants, all of that can all open up. And like you said, once one county could open, the other counties would want to follow suit as well. Of course, you would only be able to bubble with another green county. So you would be sitting in your car in Waterford, for example, driving straight to the 12 to get your cocktail in person and not have it ordered online anymore. And you could have your overnight stay then, and then return straight to Waterford then a couple of days later.
That'd be wonderful.
Well rested and rejuvenated, and having been to the spa and gone for a wild swim out in the ocean, eating those wonderful oysters and all that really, really lovely stuff. So, and I think one of the conversations,
You're the
I know. One of the conversations we've had as well, just in Irish studies, because that's my own area of expertise, is that we've had a lot of people talking about rediscovering Ireland and this whole
yeah,
other place that
absolutely.
before they would have gone on, a wine tour of South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're on the Wild Atlantic Way and they're sampling all these amazing food trucks out
Yeah.
on Omey Island and Lettermullen, and having these amazing experiences with their children, with their grandparents, with their families, meeting up. And the whole idea of a staycation in a safe, sustainable way too is another kind of theme that's coming through, that people for different reasons are maybe not thinking about flying as much for other reasons other than COVID as well, and they're thinking more about spending more time in Ireland and rediscovering Ireland in different ways, which is, from me as an Irish studies person, I find that really inspiring as well too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean that's precisely what the industry is going to be relying on in 21. We're not going to be relying on, I mean, already I know whatever groups I had coming from abroad that would have been on the books for next year, I cannot count on that. I am relying on guests from Ireland coming to stay with us, experiencing Galway, experiencing wonderful food, dipping into the beautiful cold water down below. So every hotel in Ireland, every restaurant in Ireland, everyone in tourism, even the arts and entertainment, are going to be relying on people within Ireland to support it next year.
Mm-hmm. And I think looking at that and then thinking how we can support the country, areas, regions, counties, and hopefully the whole country to get open. But the big piece is what is the strategy to keep it open? And how do we maintain that, and I suppose it's those pieces of the jigsaw. There are other colleagues of mine in particular that have very clear ideas in terms of how that could be achieved, looking at the success in other countries as well. And I'm hoping that over the next few days, more of those kinds of conversations will be coming more and more out into the national airwaves, and people will be beginning to understand different alternatives to the lockdown release yo-yo scenario. Because if we're going to be relying on that as a strategy, we're going to have a third lockdown in January, February, then maybe a fourth lockdown in May, June. That's the leaving cert again. And of course, the beginning of the height of the tourist season in Ireland as well. And as you said, we have friends and family and our community members here very much reliant on the domestic economy being able to function. So we can keep our businesses open and keep Ireland open as well. So they're all the concerns. But in Galway, we have a bit of good news tonight, which is lovely. And we hope that the things stay going in the right direction. And hopefully at some point, I won't be getting a takeout cocktail. I'll be able to clink a glass with you at some time as well, Fergus, which would be very nice indeed. With my mask on, obviously.
Thank you for having me on, and all the best to...
Not at all. Well, thank you so much for your time, and thank you to your staff. I just want to congratulate you as well, from everybody that I know in this part of the country that have experienced your hospitality and your ongoing ability to keep open under very, very challenging circumstances. So it's an inspiration to everybody far and wide, whether it's in Glasgow or in New York, indeed. So Fergus, thank you very much indeed.
Happy Christmas.
We'll be in touch again, all right?
Yes, bye-bye.